Hi, I'm Paul with MadCap Software, and in this video, I am going to take you through the process for getting your documentation translated from one language into others. Let's go. Now, the first thing you need to know when you are dealing with the translation process in MadCap Central is whether you have permissions to work with this. So what you do is come up to your name or avatar, click on that, go to permissions, and you're going to see this right here, manage translation package. Make sure that you have that. So another thing that you might want to do is come over here to notifications and scroll down, and right here under translation, you're going to see a few things here. So there are translation branches and packages. We're going to talk about those. So you can choose to be notified when those get created, updated, deleted. So you can choose all of those notifications, or you could just choose some of them if you want. Click Save, and we're done. Now, before we get into the actual translation workflow, I do think it's a good idea to talk briefly about some translation tips, because if you do some things ahead of time or avoid some things ahead of time, you're probably going to save yourself and your translator a lot of time and a lot of heartache and a lot of frustration. So first of all, you need to decide what workflow that you want to use. Do you want to use Mad Translations? Do you want to work with the people that are tied in with MadCap software on the translation end, because they have thorough knowledge of how these projects work, and they've done this time and time again? Or do you want to use your own third-party translator? You also want to talk about budget. How much money do you have to spend on doing your translation, and what things do you want to get translated? You also want to make sure that you maintain really good communication with your translation, with your translator or your language service provider. Few other things that I just want to point out real quick that you as an author can do in your content. So one of the things you probably want to do is avoid having snippets as just part of a sentence. So for example, right here, I've got this sentence. Well, this last part of it is a snippet. So this can really mess things up for your translator, because they are going to see this snippet and translate it as its own fragment. And if you have it as part of a sentence, well, they don't really have the context of that whole sentence all of the time. And the same thing can happen with conditions. So if you do something like this and you have multiple conditions in a sentence, well, that's a good thing to do if you want to drive your translator bananas. So what you would do here instead is something like this. So instead of having two different conditions in the same sentence, breaking it up like that, you would have two variations of the sentence, one with one condition applied, one with another condition applied. That is going to make things a lot easier for your translator. And again, those are just a couple of real quick examples. What you might want to do is go into the online help and just search for translation. And then under general information, there are translation best practices. So it covers these things that I talked about plus more. You might want to read through that. That might really help you do your planning and avoid a lot of mistakes up front. Let's start the translation workflow by creating a translation branch. Now, if you're not familiar with branching, you're probably asking, what is branching? Well, I have another video where I talk about that specifically. I'll put a link to it in the description. But normally when I talk about branching, it has to do with your project being in different states of development. So you're working on one feature, and you want to keep those changes separate from your work developing another feature. So you create branches. But a translated version of your project, well, that's just another branch. It's that project in a state of having been translated. So we are going to create a translation branch from a project. So first of all, I'm going to come over here to projects, and I am going to select this one right here, Austin project. And over here, up here on the right is translations. Select that. Okay, so first of all, what we're going to do is select create translation branch. And if you don't see this, that means you probably don't have the permissions set in your profile. So I'm going to select that. Now, the very first time you select that, you're going to set up what is your translation method? Is it the MAD translation service or is it manual? In other words, a third-party language service provider. Now, Mad Translations, that is MadCap Software's translations division. And so that is the one that I would choose because it is the most streamlined, it's the easiest, it's the most automated. So they're really going to hold your hand through the whole process. If you select that one, you then come here and select one of these options. What exactly do you want? Do you want them to just do translation only? Or do you want them to do translation plus revisions? So the second one would be, all right, one human is going to translate the thing, and then you're going to have a second human go and do revisions. All right. Another option is machine translation. So you are going to be able to have your project scanned and it'll automatically apply translations, which is super fast, but you don't always just want to trust the machine translation. So you have a human go and look at those and make sure they're all hunky-dory. They're all good. All right. And then the last one is this option right here, plus you have a second human doing the revisions. So it's up to you how much you want to have Mad Translations do. Then you select this, that you agree to the terms right there. First, I'll just select one of these, like this one right here, and then you click Continue. So that's if you want to use the Mad Translations service. And if you don't, if you have your own language service provider, you select this one, Manual, and then you would click Continue. So the difference is that manual is with the third party, it is more of a manual process. You're going to have to do more as the author or the translation coordinator. There are more steps that you're going to have to do. And as I go through this process, I'm going to actually choose the manual one because I'm going to show you fully what happens, but I'm going to point out certain spots in this process where you wouldn't have to do the thing because Mad Translations would do it for you. The thing you have to remember is when you are doing this translation process in MadCap Central, the projects are being set. They're full projects, and so these are Flare-based files. And so your translator, if you are using a third-party one, they need to be using a tool that can read those Flare-based files. And normally what we're talking about there is MadCap lingo, because it knows exactly what to do with all these Flare files. Now, there is a workaround in case your language service provider is using something else that doesn't read Flare files immediately. You can, in that case, you could do something like using Lingo to bundle your project, and it would put it in XLIF file format, which is an industry standard file format, and send that to them. It's an extra layer. So you can do that. That's one reason why I really point people to Mad Translations, because you can avoid all of that stuff. But let's continue here. I'm going to select Manual and click Continue. So it brings up this wizard, and now you see your translation method right up in here. And from now on, anytime you do translations, you can go up and change your mind. Click this and go in and make whatever changes you want. So let's say I have this project and I've written it in English and I want to get it translated into Spanish. So I'm going to give this branch a name. So it makes sense. I could just call it Spanish. So due date, that's optional. Do you want to give the translator a certain deadline? Well, you can just type it in here, or you can come in here. I'll go out a couple of months, end of November. All right, there's that. Branch. So whether you use branching fully or not in Central or in Flare, you do have your project in a branch. If you haven't done anything with branches, it's using what's called the master branch. But you might have other branches like release or certain feature branches, whatever. Well, when you are creating this new branch, you are basing it on an existing branch. And so it's really going to be just a duplicate of that. So if you haven't done anything with branching, it is going to be master. And even if you do things with branching, master is a very likely candidate for your source here. That's what I would most likely use is my master branch. Now, targets, you can go in and you can select specific targets in your project that you want translated. And what that means is it would the translator would be working on files that are related to this target or this target specifically. So there would be a limitation on which files get translated. If you don't select anything, they're going to translate everything, all of the segments, all of the text segments in that project. So I'm going to leave this one blank right here. We're going to translate everything. All right, so what languages do you want it translated in? So there's a full list here of supported languages, left to right, right to left. And so you just go in and select, you can select one language or many. So in this case, I just selected, I just want Spanish, and I'm going to come down here and I've got Spanish right here, or I have certain dialects that I could choose. I'm just going to choose Spanish, just like that. Click next. All right, so this page lists all of the variables that are in your project. And what it's asking is, do you want these things flattened for the translator? And so they are going to be taken out of being variables, these separate little objects, and they're just going to become flat text. Well, this can be something that helps the translator. So you might want to do this. Maybe you want to communicate with your translator to determine what you want flattened or not. So in this case, I'm looking here, okay, user guide title. That might be a really good one to flatten. You could select all of them by clicking the checkboxes over here. These are all different variable sets. So maybe communicate with your translator, decide which ones, if any, that you want flattened. Click next. Actually, I'm going to back up. So one thing I forgot, and I forgot because of this scroll bar right here. So just come down here. You also have these sections down here, notes, description on the main settings page. You could put in notes if you want to say something to the translator, give them any specific directions. And then there's also create a language skin. Do you want that or not? Well, you probably want that especially if you've got online output to have them create a language skin in this. And if you go through the MAD translations method, this is, I believe, going to be mandatory in here. All right, so let's go back to where we were. This is the summary. This is everything that we chose. All right, great. Let's click create. So it adds it on this page. That row is our new translation branch. And actually it says package here, but I will talk about that separately, the difference between packages and branches. But we have it. We have the first step done, and you can see the status is brand new, and the status will change throughout this process. But we're done for the first step. So you've created a translation branch and it shows up here on this translations page. And actually, I've gone ahead and created some more translation branches in here. Here's the original one, Spanish, but I also have French, Arabic, and Howard. Howard, what is that about? We'll talk about it. All right, so packages and branches. There are just two different views here, two different grids, and it really has to do with your personal preference, how you want to look at these. Well, what's the difference? All right, so when I'm looking at these branches, you can see that Spanish, I selected one language, French, one language, Arabic, one language. Howard, all right, I named it Howard instead of languages. I can name the thing whatever I want. And I named it that because Howard is the name of my translator in this case. And let's say that I am having him translate Chinese and Japanese. So I've got two languages in here. So this grid shows you the packaging of what you have created. Now, if I come over to branches, I see one more row in here because there's my Spanish branch, there's French, there's Arabic. All right, so there's Chinese and Japanese. It splits those two out. So I can work with these two up here individually instead of in the one package right here. You're going to notice that there actually is one additional button that you get with branches, which I will get to. But the names of the branches is using whatever language that is and the abbreviation for that language. So it is Spanish, French, Arabic with ES, FR, AR, and then Chinese and Japanese with their abbreviations as well. Now, there are lots of columns in each of these views that show you, right, it came from this source branch. This is the due date. In this case, it just shows you the languages. Am I using Mad translations? What's the status? What's the creation date? And you can come up into here and see what all of the column options are, and you can customize that. So there might be some not showing that you want to select. For example, did I select to have language skin created or flattened variables and so on? So that's what this page is about, and you are going to use one or both of these grids as you move through the process. You've created your translation branch. Well, the next thing you got to do is make sure it gets to your translator so they can give you a quote and start working on the thing. Well, this is one place where you're going to see a difference between the Mad Translations method and the manual method. With Mad Translations, you don't have to do anything. It's already sent to them. They're notified. What you're going to do is just sit and wait for them to contact you. They're going to look at what you sent them, and they're going to give you a quote. And then if you like the quote, you're going to say, yeah, cool, let's do it. That means the quote is approved and they will begin translation work. But if you choose the manual method, there is something that you need to do. You need to send the translation branch or branches to the translator. So first of all, you got to download it and then send it to them. So you can do that from either the packages or the branches grid. So in the case of Howard, I could select this one right here and click this to download it, and I would have the project with both branches for the Chinese and Japanese. But in this case, we're doing Spanish. Let's stick with that. So I can click here and select this. I could also select this drop down right here and say download source right there. I'm just going to click this and it opens up Windows and there's my file name, Spanish. I am going to keep that. Click save. If I go into my downloads folder, there it is. It's zipped up. Now I just have to get this to my translator if I'm using the manual method. How do I do that? Whatever method works for you and your translator. You could put it, send it through FTP, email if the file is small enough, whatever. Just communicate with your translator and get that to them and have them give you a quote. All right, I sent out this Spanish branch to my translator, got the quote back, I agreed with it. The translator translated that project, let me know it is all done, it's ready for me to get it back. How do I do that? All right, so this is another area where with Mad Translations, you don't need to do anything. They're going to contact you, and what's going to happen is they are going to replace this Spanish branch with their translated version. Is just going to overwrite all those files. It's done. They're just letting you know. Now, if you use the manual method, what you are going to do is upload it. They are going to get you that zipped file of the translated branch, and you're going to upload it. Now, in this case, you need to do this from the branches tab. You're not going to get the upload button here on the packages tab of this translations page. So you come over here to branches. I'm going to select Spanish right there, and I'm going to click Upload Translated Flare Project Zip. Click there. And then I just go navigate to that zipped file wherever I put it, and I put it here. And notice that I had this one renamed. It had that long Austin Project and then all those numbers and letters, and just renamed it to Austin Project Spanish. So just makes it a little easier. Select that, click open. And in just a little bit, you're going to see that this changed to received automatically. Now, if you want to go take a look at that translated content, you can come up here to Files, and up here, this drop down is going to show all of your branches, and you can see all those translation branches that I created. So here's my Spanish one. Select that, and I can go and just open up a file in here. You can see the translation is right there. Now, I did this by myself using Google Translate because in making this video, I didn't have an actual translator. I use Google Translate. I don't recommend that because who knows if this is correct. For all I know, this could be giving me the recipe to Hamburger Helper. I don't know. So that's why I would want to use a human translator. I'm going to use Mad Translations if it's my choice. Now, you might want to have someone else review the translations, make sure they're okay. Possibly you need to have the translator make edits, or over time you make edits to your source files and you need things retranslated. Well, you just work with your translator, communicate with that person, and come up with a workflow that works for both of you. When you're working through this translation process, you're going to notice that the branches have a status associated with them. And depending on the situation, these might change automatically. But either on the Packages or Branches tab, you can go in and you can change the status manually if you want or need to. So you just come in here, click on this, and in the dropdown, you can change it to sent, received, approved, or canceled. So once you change it, you just click Saved, and it is changed. So this is just for you to track the progress of each branch as it goes through the translation process. So I've created translation branches in a number of languages here, and I have gotten the translations back, let's say for Spanish and French, and let's say I'm all good with that. Now comes the really fun part. I can build some output. So I come here to builds, and of course I can manually build, or I can set a schedule if I want it to automatically happen sometime in the future or over and over, whatever I want. I'm going to do a manual build. Now I'm going to click Create Build. If I just want to create output in a particular translated language, that's real easy. I just select that branch right here. So for example, if I wanted just the Spanish, and I'm going to go through this wizard, and it would just be that project, that target in that language. However, let's say that I want to do something fancier, that I want to do multilingual output. I want, let's say, my English version of the documentation, plus I want Spanish, plus I want the French, all in one output. All right, so let's do that. But before I do, I'm going to go into Flare and show you something that you might want to do if you're generating HTML5, online output. So here I am in that project, and this is in Flare. You need to do this in Flare. You can't do it in Central right now. And that is, I want to add a button at the top of my topics so that people can switch from one language to the other. So it's real easy to do that. First, you add a skin component. So I'm here in the project organizer, and I've added this one called toolbar. So it's real easy. You just do add skin, and then it's this one right here, topic toolbar. You add that thing in there, and it's this. Now, I added select language over to the right side. It started out over here on the left. I added it to the right, and there are a few other buttons in here too. So I have that toolbar. Now I go into this other folder in my Content Explorer under Resources, Template Pages, and I have this template page here, which I'll open right here. And so this has some proxies in it. So it's going to automatically put in certain content for all the topics that are using this template page. So basically everything except for my home page. So I'm going to have these breadcrumbs at the top, and then there's my body proxy, which is the content. Now, what I did was I inserted this topic toolbar right there. So I just put my cursor in there and I went to insert and over here to proxy and then topic toolbar proxy. And I selected that toolbar skin component that I created. And so it's right there. It's that gray rectangle. Okay, so I did that beforehand, and you're going to see the benefit of that now. So here I am back in this wizard, and let's say that I want to pick the first language, and I'm going to pick additional languages on the next page. Now, I want this to be English and Spanish and French. And let's say that English is my main language. That's what I started out with, right? So you probably want that one to be selected here on this first page. And in my case, I based everything on this master branch. So I'm going to select master. So I'm going to get my English in here and then target. What do I want? Well, in this case, I just have a couple of targets in here. I have an HTML5 one and I have PDF. Let's start and do HTML5. Select that. All right, next page. Now I can add additional languages if I want. So I'm going to click this and let's add Spanish in here. It automatically connects it with the actual language in here. So there are all the languages down here and the dialects, and it knows which one it's associated with. So it just plops it in right there. Click add. So it added that. Now let's add French. Come in here, select French, it adds the language, click add. So this is the order in which you're going to see things. The first one was master, so that's my English. And then there's Spanish and French. So when people click that drop down in the online output, it's going to be in that order, English, Spanish, French. If I want to change the order, I change my mind here. I want to make French second, just click that and it'll change the order. So now I just click next and it gives me a summary. This is everything I chose and click build. So it's just going to be a moment here because it's not a very big project and we'll take a look. All right, it's finished building. We know because it says complete and this is a solid green line right there. I'm going to expand this, click this to look at it. So there's my home page and it is in English, but that button I added not to the home page, but to every other page. So I'm going to click on one of these and here it is, this globe right here. And if I click on that, I can switch to French. There it is in French and in Spanish. So that's online output. Let's take a look at PDF output. So let's come back here and let's start a new build. And this time I am going to, again, select master here, but instead of HTML5, I'll select my PDF, go to next. I'm going to add French in here. And then I'm going to add Spanish. Oops, it's right there. Click add. Next, there's my summary. Click build, and we're going. That target's done. Let's expand it and let's open it. And here it is. Well, because I did this multilingual output, it starts out with this TOC that's just kind of built in, and it lets me jump to whatever language I want. So it's all stitched together. It starts out with English, and it goes through all of the English topics, right? Until it gets down to about page 15 or so, right there. And then it switches over into French. And it goes from French all the way down here. There's the last page of the French, and then it goes into Spanish. So that's pretty groovy, right? And that's the process for getting your content translated from one language to others in MadCap Central. Thanks for watching. Talk to you next time.